one realizes they're being fooled because they're too busy laughing at the fool.
Is that how you see me?
That's how everyone sees you. Isn't that the idea?
Mater! I'm sticking by you the way you always stick by me!
Ready?
Is the Pope Mobile Catholic?
Non ci credo.
You gotta be kidding me.
Hey guys, Golden Fox here, and today my review is going to be a little different. With me on discussing today's movie, he's an up-and-coming reviewer in animation. If you enjoy reviewers of animation like CCap13 and Healing Toon more, then this user should be of no exception. So, ladies and gentlemen, may I introduce you, Flame Amigo 619, aka the Toon Critic.
Hello, peoples, dudes, dudettes of all pant sizes, transvestites, and all that other stuff. For those that don't know who I am, ToonKritic's the name, and Toon's the name of my game. I specialize in anything animated related, and today's movie is right up my alley.
Mixing with my written review here, we're both going to discuss Pixar's latest release, Cars 2. Now there's two things I want to get out of the way before discussing Cars 2. Firstly, for some ludicrous reason, Cars was considered the weakest entry in the Pixar canon due to how supposedly formulated the script was.
I beg to differ. Either Ratatouille or A Bug's Life have to be the weakest.
A Bug's Life for me too. But to me, nearly and ironically, every Pixar movie was formulated. Hell, Finding Nemo, acclaimed as Pixar's best, was just as formulated if not more than Cars, and yet no one brings that matter up. But nevertheless, despite others' feelings on Cars, I loved it. It was sweet, touching, cute, and it brought a good lesson about egotism and sportsmanship. Secondly, continuing that topic, I was very shocked at the reception for Cars 2. I mean, it's got a 35% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is lower than Chicken Little. Hell, that atrocious garbage needs to be way lower than any other film that's bashed today. How can it be that low, especially for Pixar standards? It really upsets me that a Pixar movie has been dropped that low, considering that my feelings for Pixar are strong. They carried a solid decade of movies, even if they're far from perfect.
Well, Pixar did just finish Toy Story 3, and at this point, they realized that there was no other movie they could make that could even come close to the standards of Toy Story 3.
But in fairness, when I saw the trailers for Cars 2, I was immediately skeptical by the premise itself, let alone asking if there were any loose endings to the first. It was NASCAR blending with James Bond, which sounded like an awkward idea.
I, on the other hand, thought it was a great idea. Fast cars, explosions, the trailer made it look epic. It's something that kids and teenagers love. In a way, it's like a kid's version of James Bond and Fast and the Furious.
Huh, never thought of it that way. Well, even with that in mind, I was highly entertained with Cars 2. In fact, I feel it's just as good, maybe even better than the first Cars. It sounds arguable, sure, but I have my reasons.
Cars 2 is actually centered on Mater this time, rather than like McQueen. Taking a summer vacation from his racing days, McQueen visits and hangs out with Mater and Sally back at Radiator Springs. After getting bashed on TV behind his back, McQueen gets involved into an argument on the phone as it's being broadcast on TV with a famous European Formula One race car named Francesco. He is then challenged to a worldwide racing tournament held in Europe, and he sincerely accepts. Mater is also taken along with McQueen's friends to the three tracks he has to face: Japan, Italy, and England. While this is happening, Mater gets accidentally caught in the middle of a mission with some professional British spies who also mistaken him as one.
From this point on, Mater goes on wild adventures, but then dealing with some personal dilemmas with Lightning's friendship, due to his behavioral mishaps back in Japan. Throughout the movie, Mater begins to learn about himself from different perspectives, and yes, this movie eventually takes a dark turn on the road. No pun intended.
How dark can it be, you ask? Oh, I don't know. Let's see, they actually kill someone off. Oh yeah, Up did that, and Toy Story 3 got very close to it, but Cars 2? This one has a bit of a body count.
On the spy side of the story, we're pretty much given every James Bond cliché possible. There's the intense music style, the villain with a monocle that plans a evil scheme, and tons of action. But to an extent, these clichés have some very good craftsmanship in the production. The action set pieces are very well choreographed, and the devices attached to the cars are very cleverly creative.
There are many different disguises and gadgets, and some of these are voice activated, but they're not just there for the cool factor, they're actually there for helping the story. They come in good use as to how the characters escape various obstacles. Surely guys get an adrenaline pump out of that.
This subplot also involves adult matters. One is mostly regarding gas, natural gas, and economic debate. It's not really forced in front of your kids as you would expect at first, but there is a growing concern to make you think about. Another adult matter is a form of prejudice on aging cars who are a part of the villain side of the story, though I'm giving too much away. What makes me like this movie more than the first Cars is that not only are the main characters dealing with personal issues with each other, and Mater learns more about himself from other perspectives, but we see more of the world that's populated by automobiles and their cultures. The spy subplot is one of those examples. This also takes effect in Mater, and what he learns. Some may argue that some characters have been made into stereotypes, but I think that's to help us understand without the racial intentions.
Mater experiences a lot of different continents, and under the perspective of the populated automobiles, we only know the world as much as he does. So I never thought of anything offensive if it were ever present. Going back to personal dilemmas, one of the spies compliments to Mater on who he is, but he says, well, he kind of says it in an unintentionally offensive way. He calls Mater an idiot, but he compliments it as a good disguise during the missions. When he later realizes his personality by other perspectives, he feels remorseful, hurt, and also offended. But in the end, just being who he is not only overcomes the various obstacles, but showing his own cleverness and analysis that overshadows his first appearance.
Mater is portrayed something more than just the Disney goofy side for automobiles, and it shows. Or at the very least, that's how I saw it. Cars 2 really made me care for Mater, and it did the job to teach us that first impressions are not the last. Don't judge someone by who they are. Get to know them more, and you'll know them better.
Now let's discuss the side characters. Lightning McQueen, besides hawking up the poster for the movie, even though Mater's supposed to be the main character, didn't really get to do much for the film. It's good to see that he's improved, but this movie doesn't do anything else with his character or try to further his persona.
Almost all the side characters like Sally, Ramon, Flo, Sheriff, and Mac only had a few cameos, and that's about it. The spotlight belongs to the two spy cars, Finn McMissile and Holly Shipwell.
Finn has got to be my favorite character from this movie. I wouldn't have chosen anyone other than Michael Caine to play him. He did an excellent job. Making Finn and Aston Martin was a nice touch, and in terms of bonds, I find him to be well, pardon me for saying this, a well-blended, shaken, not stirred mix of Sean Connery and Pierce Brosnan.
I like them for what they are, especially Holly. Finn was there when he was needed, but I didn't feel much for him as I did with Holly. In the relations to Mater, Finn understood him to an extent, but he didn't get the emotional part like what Holly did. Holly was the character who learned to appreciate Mater for who he was. She first didn't like him, and thought of him as a mistake, but when given him the chance, well, you get the idea in their chemistry.
I smell a fan fiction! The one thing I noticed is that characters like Luigi, Guido, Fillmore, and Sarge got a lot more to do, which I thought was great as they didn't have much to do in the first movie. As for the villains, well, I can only really talk about Miles Axelrod and Professor Zundrap. Miles did a decent job of covering up his identity, but the reveal seemed a bit anticlimactic. Professor Z and all the other Lemon cars had little to no character development, and seemed like they were just there to fill the villain spots. Sure, Z had his moments, but that was really it. Also, drawing in real race car drivers and having them voice their car versions really didn't feel necessary. Like Jeff Gorvet, Daryl Cartrip, Brent Mustangburger, David Hobbscap. Yeah, if only they actually got to do something, because I'm pretty sure no one else cared about them. Finally, I should mention Francesco Bernoulli, and I can safely say he's better than that snob Chick Hicks from the first movie. He was a fair, if occasionally rude rival to McQueen. Despite getting a little screen time, well, he wasn't too bad. It's a pity they didn't expand on the rivalry, though.
Final verdict? These movies have their faults and their problems. No one asked for a sequel to Cars as they wanted one for The Incredibles, including myself, and they're by no means a masterpiece from Pixar. But I still think this movie is nowhere near as horrendous as it's being interpreted.
Considering the first movie won a Golden Globe for Best Animated Feature, I guess not everybody hated it, huh?
Again, I think it's better than the first Cars, and honestly, I think people are just hateful to this one because in theory, they didn't like the original Cars, so automatically they would just bash the second.
Seriously, it's not that bad. There was some great action and suspense, the voice acting was better, the visuals were awesome, which they have better villains though. I can see there being a sequel to this, and I'm personally hoping for one. Overall, I think it gets a 3.5 stars from me.
The first Cars taught a lesson about egotism and sportsmanship, but the second one taught lessons about prejudice, trust, a couple of adult lessons, and it gives us a bigger tour through the world populated by living automobiles. It has more of its culture. They don't call it Cars for nothing. That's why I like this movie more than the first. Also, since this movie has a 6-year period between the two, any kid who's grown on Cars can appreciate and relate to what Cars 2 provides. So I'll go with the gut and give Cars 2 a 4 stars out of 5.
With that being said, I'm the Toon Critic, keeping you totally tuned for your viewing entertainment.
And this is Golden Fox. Take care.